The first question with this Great Awakening and Ascension topic is, the first one is general and simple, because the second question, you're going to be able to expound on your experience. So number one is, what do the terms of Great Awakening and Ascension mean personally to you? We'll start with Steve.
Okay, so for me in general, Great Awakening means becoming aware that dark forces are alive and well, threatening our physical existence, but that they only have as much power as we grant them. The benevolent power of creation is so far superior that it obliterates and transforms any threat. So the fear, which is the predominant tool used to create the illusion of powerlessness, is then seen as nothing more than a flimsy smokescreen. So ascension to me is the process of practicing that knowing every day until it becomes a predominant force of transformation. So along with that, to me, it means withdrawing my attention and energy from any outdated or ineffective or inhumane entity that enslaves me, whether it's religious or financial, educational, medical, familial, governmental, or cultural, and then redirecting it to whatever enriches my life and honors personal sovereignty and encourages personal responsibility.
So what does the Great Awakening and Ascension mean to me? It's awakening from the dream spell of the I'll just say the archons or the negative ETs. We are in a battle against powers and principalities who rule the airwaves. So when each spirit is born, we're born into a system that grabs your consciousness and has you think and believe and move a certain way. So the Great Awakening is being able to put on the brakes and go, oh, no more. I'm not going to listen to the dream spell. I'm going to go within. I'm going to become aware of thoughts. I'm going to be the observer of thoughts. I'm going to awaken to the idea and the knowing that I am not separated from awareness, from divinity itself. So ascension then becomes the act of descending into all those created mind looping beliefs, as Steve was saying, you know, religion and financial, political, the media, Hollywood. They are, you know, they create this narrative, and to ascend, you have to be able to look at that, say, no, 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 I'm not separated from awareness. I'm going to ascend and listen to the greater one on the inside of me. So it basically, the awareness, the Great Awakening is the idea that we're awakening from the dream spell, and ascension is coming out of the muck and mire of everything that the negative ETs, archons, 13 families, media have pushed on us.
Okay, Rick.
Everything by divine appointment, right?
Yes, and thank you for your comments, Mark.
So the Great Awakening is a cosmic event. As the Earth and our solar system move through the galactic cloud, we are moving closer to a photon belt, and the energetics are becoming more rapid. The frequencies of light are accelerating, and that's affecting our genetics. It's actually affecting the molecular and atomic structures of all everything around us. So that's the Great Awakening, and that is causing a lot of, you know, what you were speaking of, both Mark and Steve, that the densities that we've been involved with, the limitations and the adopted systems that we've been slaved to are starting to melt and dissolve. I call it the knockdown phase. You know, we're going through the knockdown phase of all of the things that have already ended. They were built on an illusion anyway. So the ascension process is an ongoing thing that as we ascend, you recognize that you were a much more broader being than you adopted as far as identity. And so as we ascend, the idea of identities actually becomes less. And so we become more a part of who we are on a much bigger sense.
My approach to this has a key, and that is letting go for both of them. In order to awaken and ascend, we've got to let go. If we were to let go of everything that keeps our vibration suppressed, like we get from the media and all these other things that the three of you have been talking about, our energetic frequency would effortlessly rise up. I mean, effortlessly. We would rise to the top, just like holding a cork underwater and letting it go. It's going to go to the top. It's effortless. Now, awakening and ascension is generally and simply both about the same thing. Letting go of things that don't serve us, like the need for knowing something, or the need for being in control of people and situations, or taking on identities, whether they're assigned by others, you know, you're a jerk, or by ourselves, I'm stupid. So the meaning and the key of both to me is awakening and then ascending is the place where thinking becomes separate from awareness. And letting go of knowing and controlling are tied into our wearing of identities. When we let go of these things, identity shifts to becoming only one thing. As the source named himself. Hey, Moses said, hey, God, now what do you want me to tell Pharaoh? Who are you? Well, just tell him I am that I am. Okay. Now, we are connected, and we are connected well to that source. So I am. I mean, when we speak of ourselves, when we identify ourselves, we say I am. Identity shifts to becoming only one thing. That I am that I am. Nothing needs to follow I am except for what the egoic mind places there, wants to place there. Oh, I'm so stupid, or I'm better than you. Now, let me give you an example, an accusation. Oh, you're selfish, someone says to me. I could say to them, well, to you, I am that, I am. Isn't that a good response? You're selfish, Larry. To you, I am that I am, because this is how you choose to perceive me. I am not what you say I am. You are what you say I am. And all you have of me is a perception, an opinion, a judgment, an interpretation. And my response to you is my awareness or observation and witness of who and what you are. So like Moses goes to Pharaoh, hey, let my people go. Who sent you? I am. Who is this God? I am that I am. What is that supposed to mean? Well, it's simple. If you let my people go, I am mercy, that I am. But if you don't, I am merciless, a migraine headache, if you don't. So, awakening is a shift in consciousness that separates my thinking from awareness. Now, thinking is connected to overthinking. We overthink things. It's about control. We think the way we think a lot because we want to control things. And it begs the question, who put you in control, or who put me in control? And the only answer is you put you in control, or I put me in control. And awareness is about, it's different. When you wake up and you become aware that you're awake, you accept what is and what isn't, and you flow with that. Now, we have misperceptions. A lot of people that I hear talking about Oh, I'm awake. Well, they make it a shrine or a point of destiny from which they may begin coasting because I've attained. It's not a happily ever after ending that perfects my reality. And it's not the answer that lets me know now that I will be satisfied from here on out. Those get us in trouble. Awakening cannot satisfy me, but it can and does free me from the need to be satisfied. So with awakening comes the beginning of being able to accept what is. And awakening does not bring answers to my questions of life. It brings an end to the questions because I just accept, okay, this is what it is. Okay, it's raining. I wanted sunshine, but it's raining. And why is that? Because we are now able to accept what is, and what isn't. So my awakening is the introduction of a higher dimension of consciousness into my awareness. And just a couple thoughts about ascension. That shift in consciousness that caused the awakening is the means by which I ascend. It allows me to exist within each present moment, out of limited dimensions of time, into the limitless dimensions in the eternal present where I live forever, where I exist forever. The concepts of time shift to the ever, forever present moment. Question 2 is more personal this time. How did your own awakening relate to your own personal ascension into conscious awareness? And back to Steve.
Geez, do I have to follow you, Larry?
You don't have to, but please do.
So for me personally, Great Awakening is first and foremost the recognition that I was brainwashed by a blatant, brazen propaganda of the mainstream media. Back in 2016, I cut ties with my family, who were all Trump supporters, because I believed the mainstream media narrative that he was a threat to not only the LGBT community, but to democracy in general. So as a man of principle, I felt compelled to act on my convictions to make the strongest statement possible that people needed to wake up to the fact that an ignorant, self-absorbed clown was taking over as dictator. So little did I realize until I met Mark that most of the information I had been fed was a lie, and that in fact the man, despite some unrefined personal characteristics, was the only thing standing between me and communism and a transhumanistic future. So this unveiling, of course, was only the tip of the iceberg. I eventually came to understand that malevolent forces were hard at work, hijacking other egalitarian causes that many minorities like myself were invested in order to carry out their sinister plan of population reduction and global control. So ascension to me is exercising personal sovereignty. It's digging down into my core to find the courage to refuse to acquiesce to any order or mandate or law which violates God-given rights. And so recognizing that no external authority has the power to govern me unless I consent. So I guess in essence, it's the awareness that when a sovereign being is in full recognition of his or her divinity, that evil is powerless.
So how did my own awakening relate to my personal ascension? In the awakening, I had to be willing to question everything. I had to question my religion. I had to question the things I judged. I had to, everything, every aspect of life. And because I was willing to just get raw and real with my reality that I created from my brain, that helped, that allowed my consciousness to expand. I had to let go of all the little me ideas, like I'm Mark. Well, who's Mark? Mark doesn't really exist. In the ego, Mark is, you know, he creates this persona that he wants the world to love and all this, but I had to let go of and question everything that made up Mark. And when I was willing to do that, then, and I'm still doing it, it's like this ascension is ongoing. I'm expanding from one degree of awareness to another degree. And they could be very little things, but they're huge jumps for me. And they're scary jumps. I won't go into what happened last night. But there was a moment last night. Spirit had me get up and it would start questioning, and I went into this fear, and Steve said, "What's going on?" And he held me. Anyways, I'm still going through that questioning and that awakening, which moves me into the ascension, which is just the expansion of consciousness into the one, and letting go of Mark's world, to the greater, bigger picture. It can be scary at times. And last night, in the middle of the night, what I was just describing, it was kind of scary because I had to let go of some of me. And I had to deal with the subconscious, my subconscious. And it's really interesting when awareness has you do this in the middle of the night, just randomly. Okay, we're going to deal with your subconscious tonight. We're going to deal with some of your limiting beliefs, and that is the ascension. So the awakening, questioning everything, led to the ascension, which is the expansion into the greater I am that you were talking about, Larry. I am that I am. Not I am Mark. I am this, I am that. I am that I am. That's a scary place. At least for me, it's when I'm expanding, like, oh, I got to let go of little Mark and little Mark ideas and religion and media and all that. So anyways, that's my answer to the question.
Personally, this time, with the definitions that you gave, how do you, or how did your own awakening relate to your own personal ascension into conscious awareness?
Well, I was gifted, I guess, a leapfrog or a quantum leap. I had in my late teens, I had gotten pneumonia and mono and ended up in the hospital and basically had a near-death experience. And after that, my consciousness was pretty much different. A lot of the limitations had been wiped away. So for several years, a lot of magic occurred in my life, and the connectedness to the one or source was very, very strong. And that experience, it still is unfolding. You know, there was a lot of information exchanged, and that in itself was my awakening and my ascension, because I was at one, immediately knowing, okay, I'm not my body. I'm part of the infinite soup here. And so that was my personal awakening. And then, of course, moving into the realm of the little details of the planet and the earth and the society and all the cultural stigmas and things that had been adopted, you know, working through those emotionally just has helped me to, again, levitate a little bit more in my higher self and be less contained in my lower ideas.
And you brought up good terms. So I'll recap. I'll recall my definition and then finish this question with my own response. Remember, awakening is a shift in consciousness to the place where my thinking and my awareness separate. So now I have to draw a contrast between what it means to be a thinker and what it means to be an aware being. I am not my thoughts, period. I am the awareness behind the thoughts, observing them. We go astray when we think, oh, I think this way, so I must be. And, as you think in your heart, so you are. Scripture and other places you read this. Well, I think we take that out of context. The amazing distinction between thinking and awareness is, by default, as a human being, the mind interprets and judges. That's what it does. And there's no good or bad about it. It just brings to you what you focus on. So if you're going to focus on judgment and interpreting what other people mean by things instead of taking it at face value, okay. The mind interprets and judges, but awareness just observes and perceives. Now, my human machine runs on autopilot, as does yours, and that's the subconscious. Awareness, though, it's my conscious awareness that optimizes my performance, and wisdom arises from my awareness, but not always from my thinking. And I can get wise from thinking certain things, but my awareness is what really feeds wisdom. Now, they tell us we only use 10% of our brain power. Well, to me, using 10% of the brain means I do conscious thinking. To me, the 10% is the one I am consciously thinking, conscious awareness, 10% of the time. That's basically the way it goes. And I'm on autopilot, however, the other 90% of the time in a given day. I mean, you get in your car and you drive to a store. Do you have to think, okay, now I've got to put the key in and then turn it. And now I've got to put the brake on and put it in gear. No, that's autopilot. And as darkness is the absence of light, ego, that menace that I created, who's behind much of my thinking, ego is the absence of awareness. And we all know that our thinking is fed nutrition, if you, so to speak, from my ego. My ego is the nurturer of that. So my life journey is awareness, and it yields the complete silencing of the constructs that emerge from those past imposed limiting identities and borrowed BS belief systems. Identities simply indicate status, not so much my attributes, character, and attitude. I mean, it relates to it, but I got to think of my identities as my status. I am a father of two living men. I am the father. Okay, that's a status. That doesn't have anything to do so much with my attitude, character, and my attributes. That's a whole different thing that relates to how I relate to them. Now, let's talk about thinking for a minute. Thinking, or let's say overthinking. If left to its own devices, thinking can be an enemy of my soul. And so thinking is filtered through my BS, my belief systems. And that is where it becomes a problem for me. We filter our thinking from our BS. And it's a function of my ego that cannot help but judge according to the standards of right and wrong that I've set for my life. I heard Laura Eisenhower say this once, and I had to stop the video and just contemplate on it. It just really touched me, it got me. She said, truth does not need belief to exist. It just is. Nothing binds me except my thoughts. Nothing limits me except my beliefs. Nothing controls me except my fears. So even sacred text says, oh, only believe. Jesus said, only believe. Well, to me, that's more about trusting than it is about adopting belief systems. And of course, when you believe, it is a belief system, of course. But when he said only believe, he was saying trust. Here's an example. Just because I err doesn't mean that I have to suffer. It's my thinking, my belief that I deserve to suffer that causes the suffering. And the universe is not punishing me. The universe is not blessing me. It's just reflecting back to me what's going on in my head. And I know from experience, that I can have anything I want if I give up the BS, the system of belief that says I can't have it. So I could say, I want that job. And people do this all the time. I want that job. And when they say that, they set aside all the obstacles and go for it, they can get it. So when we awaken and start ascending, we come to know that we are not separated from the source or from each other. And my bottom line is, being spiritual has nothing to do with systems of belief and everything to do with my state of consciousness, accepting what is. And just a short word about now awareness. Awareness can be aware of the mind, but mind cannot be aware of awareness. Because mind interprets and judges, and awareness observes and perceives, bringing it to knowing stuff. So I am awareness. I'm disguised as this, what the state calls a person. I call it a being. I'm disguised, but I'm this being experiencing the person that I think I am. So awareness perceives, but the mind interprets. And being aware is observation without judging something as right or wrong, without placing extreme meanings on things or duality. Awareness is the greatest agent for change. And rather than being my thoughts and emotions, in my awakened and ascending state, I choose to be the awareness behind the thoughts. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it took a long time for me to get there, because I was determined to be the thought behind it. I heard many teachers talk about being the observer, rather, behind the thought and not the thought itself. And I finally got it. And sometimes I slip and fall, but I got it. And that is how I personally commingle my process of mastering my ascension to the experience of having awakened in the first place that created it.